The Salina Rescue Mission focuses on rescuing and restoring lives in Jesus' name. Some men come to us simply needing food and shelter while they search for a job and return to independent living, whereas others arrive needing to completely turn their lives around. Either way, the process of helping people is not easy. It takes a lot of time and resources to help someone get their lives back on track, or in some cases, on track for the first time ever. I'd like to introduce you to one man who has gone through this challenging process.
I grew up in and around Salina, Kansas. Went through school, started my alcohol addiction when I was in high school, and met my future wife in college. I loved my wife to be, and I cared about her, and I just wanted to spend my life with her. And I didn't think at that time that alcohol was a problem. It was during that time in Colby with my wife that my 3 daughters were born, which was an emotional time, but a time I can't remember a lot of because of my addictions.
We would go to visit him and the girls, and he would always be drunk, always have a drink in his hand from the time he got up in the morning until he finally passed out.
And I guess the end result came after 9 years of this struggle when I got arrested for another DUI. I ended up in jail in Colby, Kansas, and during the very first part of that my wife had filed for divorce.
Curtis first arrived at the mission in 2002. He had been living in a tent in the Thomas Park area of Salina. Alcoholism was in full control of Curtis, and although he made some efforts to overcome his addictions, he quickly retreated to his drinking.
My wife had quit letting me call my children and talk to my children, and I couldn't see my children. I just decided I'm gonna live the way I want to live, and nobody cares anyway, so what does it matter? I had a tent set up out in the woods that I lived in. That would help keep me somewhat warm in the winter and dry during snowstorms or rainstorms. And every morning I was out early getting stuff together to get the money to continue fixing my habit.
Several times we had to take him to the hospital to, he has to have 9 lives because I don't know how he survived as many times as he did, as sick as he was.
In 2011, Curtis had an episode while drinking that led to his hospitalization and arrest.
I was hallucinating severely in the park, and the Salina Police Department picked me up to take me to the hospital. And during that time, I assaulted a police officer. I kept having a recurring thought and seed planted in my heart that only Jesus could help me overcome my addictions.
After 9 long years of ministry, Curtis was ready and able to be accepted into our New Life program.
Those early days were pretty decent days. He was very motivated to make those changes. He was realizing where he came from and realizing how painful it was to return there, and that kept him moving forward.
I began to have a seed of hope, a hope that I could have a better life, a hope that things didn't always have to remain the way they were, that God could do this if I would allow Him to do it.
Curtis went on to graduate from the New Life program in 2012. He got a job and moved out of the mission. Unfortunately, this would not last.
We felt amazing the first time he graduated, and we were like, okay, finally, we have our brother back. He's got his head on his shoulders, he knows what he's doing, and it was great.
Curtis decided to move into his own apartment, maybe a little bit premature. He just didn't talk through the plan very well with people in the church or with people here at the mission. But moved out into his own place. That continued pressure, not talking to people and letting them really care for him and direct him. I believe these created an environment for him to give himself permission to relapse.
I totally went back to that dark place that I was comfortable with. The last thing I remember was I was walking through the park and then an ambulance was there.
When Curtis relapsed and ended up back in the hospital, it was a pretty low point for him. It was also a defining moment for us at the mission.
When Curtis came back to the program the second time, he spent some time thinking about it. It was a really solid decision because it wasn't just him running away from some problems into a program that would help give him credibility again.
Going through the New Life program the second time, I had decided that God didn't want 75 or 90% of my life. God wanted 100%.
The first time I met Curtis was about 5 years ago or so, and it was after he had, I believe, relapsed. And what we learned is we needed to connect him to more people, not less, more than 2 people. And so Curtis just wouldn't go away. He just kept coming back. And we kept connecting him with more men and healthy couples in the church.
After graduating the second time in May of 2014, Curtis understood that he needed to learn to be a servant of Christ rather than focusing on serving himself.
Curtis has done this wonderful job of being involved at the mission to where now he's actually a leader out there and hired out at the mission. At church now, he's a leader of the Saturday night of Celebrate Recovery.
I happen to go to the same church as Curtis, and Curtis knows probably 8 times as many people as I do. He walked into that church looking for relationships, and at the graduation, all these people were testifying to his impact on their lives. I mean, these are leaders in the church that were standing up and saying a bunch of wonderful things about Curtis that were all true, and they were connected to him because he connected with them.
This is the culmination of 12 years of ministering to Curtis, and now he's ministering to others. But more important than any of these other things is the healing that's taking place in his family.
Every family member can now say that, he's back and he's better than he ever was before. We can depend on him. We love him so much.
Something I'd never thought I would see would be not only my daughters, but now to be able to spend time with them, but with my grandchildren, and that they know who I am, that I'm mommy's daddy and I'm grandpa.
Thank you for helping Curtis and so many others like him through your support of the mission. We could not have done it without you.